Let's build Infernoble! And I'm on fire again. Nope, this is fine. This is fine. We can continue as long as I don't explode. I exploded! And welcome back to Let's Learn, Yu-Gi-Tube's most noble deck building show. I'm Hardleg Joe, if ya didn't know, joined as always by Twitch chat, just down there filling things up with emotes, as well as my brave Squire Critter. Yes, you're very powerful, very strong. Now enjoy your nappy time back there. And yeah, today we're learning Infernoble Knights, the fiery synchro offshoot of the original Noble Knight archetype. And you may be noticing that these cards have been out for a while. Usually this show is for newer cards and archetypes, but today we're making an exception because I got a Patreon request from one Colin Todd who made quite a big donation in order for me to look at these cards and help him learn it. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give this the Let's Learn treatment. And if you're unfamiliar with that, this is a blind deck building show, which means I currently don't know how to play all these cards. I'm gonna be going in here, reading a lot of these for the first time, and trying to use my years of Yu-Gi-Oh experience to figure out how it works. As such, I will not be building the best Infernoble deck, or even necessarily a good Infernoble deck, but I should give you a good primer on the archetype, a solid foundation that you can build off of. So whether you're new to Yu-Gi-Oh in general or just new to these cards, you have a great place to start if you want to look up more advanced deck profiles or just try to figure it out on your own. So without further ado, let's go ahead and slice into the deck. Alright, so on this show there is one type of card we usually begin with when trying to learn a new archetype, and the chat already knows it. Look at them down there talking about field spells like they can feel it in their heart. And yeah, it's the field spell. If you're new to this game, field spells are often the glue that holds archetypes together. Each archetype can only have one field spell, for the most part, so usually they have effects that kind of unify everything. They'll inform you about the win condition, or at the very least, what the archetype is trying to do. And Infernoble Knights have a field spell, although you wouldn't know it because it doesn't say Infernoble on it. It's somewhere in here. We'll check it out. But yeah, we got the Noble Arms Museum, which is a bunch of swords in glass cases with like blue hologram people standing around. I don't know about how I feel about that. It's kind of weird. But yeah, it says, all fire warrior monsters you control gain 500 attack. Once per turn, you can pay 1,200 life points, add one Noble Arms card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself. Once per turn, if the previous effect was activated this turn, you could target one Noble Knight monster card in your spell trap zone, special summon it. Also, if you activated this effect while you did not control Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except warrior monsters. Alright, so more so than almost any other field spell I've read on this show, this tells you everything you need to know. It's an archetype of fire warriors. It doesn't lock you specifically into Noble Knights or Infernoble Knights or Synchros, it's that line specifically, which tells you right off the bat that you can mix this with other fire warriors. And because I've played this game for a while, I know there's a lot of good fire warriors in this game that you could mix with this. In addition, you know it's going to have support with the Noble Arms, which we already kind of figured out because there's a lot of Infernoble. One neat trick to know if you're new to Yu-Gi-Oh! If there's a card that says like Infernoble Arms, if it has the word within it, Noble Arms, it doesn't matter if something comes before it, it still counts as a Noble Arms card. Yu-Gi-Oh! Occasionally plays that trick where they like add on new archetypes to old archetypes, and that way you can search technically both this and the old Noble Arms cards, which I didn't include here because that would make things even more complicated. In addition, this tells you that your Noble Knight monster cards are going to go in the spell trap zone, probably as equipped cards, and you'll be special summoning them if you control Charles. So since this is named specifically here, this is probably going to be your boss monster. I mean, this is where we would go next anyway, because usually if we're talking about an archetype, the next place you go after the field spell is the extra deck if they have those. goes, and the highest level monster is usually the most powerful one. But just in case that wasn't clear, the fact that this specifically requires it means you're probably going to be turboing out this guy as often as possible. So let's go ahead and read it. It's Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles, Warrior Synchro, 3000 attack, only 200 defense, level 9. I do want to point out, this is a fire monster with 200 defense, which means it has synergy with a bunch of weird stuff that I didn't think it would. I don't think we'll be playing any of those cards, but just funny to note. Its material is generic, 1 tuner plus 1 or more non-tuners, and it has the following effect. If an equipped card becomes equipped to a monster on the field, even during the damage step, you can destroy 1 card on the field. During the end phase, you can equip 1 equipped spell from your hand or graveyard to this card, then equip 1 fire warrior monster from your deck to this card as an equipped spell and have it gain 500 attack. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, so we're seeing a continuation of the equip card theme. If it wasn't already obvious, this is a deck designed around equip cards. Most of the spells are equip cards, and this just helps you get them. It also helps you equip these from the deck, so depending on what kind of effects these grant, you could be giving this quite substantial protection. At the moment, it's not much of a boss monster. It doesn't do a whole lot on its own. A non-targeting pop is good, but you would need some way to activate it like during your opponent's turn to disrupt them. Then it becomes pretty great. Otherwise, it's pretty good for like tearing apart boards potentially, but it'll really depend on how these work and how the rest of these extra deck monsters work. I can't help but noticing that there's another monster that has Emperor Charles in the title. So this is Knight Emperor Charles, and this is Emperor Charles. So normally I would just go down the rest of the synchros, but I have to assume because of the name and because of what I mentioned before, I'm willing to bet that this thing's name will be Charles while it's on the field. So let's go ahead and check this out. Let's see how this contributes to the Charles playstyle. Alright, so we have Emperor Charles the Great. This is a warrior link. It's a link 1 with 3000 attack, and it requires a level 9 Infernoble Knight Charles equipped with equip cards. How oddly specific. Okay, so it's very rare that you see link 1s in general. Usually they're like generic play extenders, but this one is not only specific, but it requires 1 specific monster. I don't think is there any other archetype that does that? I don't think I've seen that before, where it's like, you must use this, there are no other options. They specifically say a level 9, so you can't even like steal the name with like a card effect unless you steal the level, and it has to be equipped with equip cards. It's not enough to get this guy, you've got to equip him before you can make this. So quite a lot of hoops to jump through to summon this. What does it do? Hopefully it's something really good. If this card is link summoned, you can target 1 Emperor Charles in your graveyard. This card's name becomes that target's original name, and it gains that target's original effects. Then equip that target to this card as an equip spell that gives it 500 attack. Once per turn, when a spell trap card or effect is activated, quick effect, send 1 equip spell from your hand or field to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Okay, that is very strange. So basically what you're doing is making this, then you immediately link it off for Charles the Great, which has the same name and the same effects and is equipped with the Charles, but has 500 more attack and now has a spell trap negate. And let me read this again real quick. Once per turn, if the previous effect was applied, you could target 1 Noble Knight monster in your spell trap zone, special summon it. So does that mean that if you haven't used this effect already, you could just summon this back and have 2 of them, and then they each have their own effects? You can only use the effect of this name once per turn. I think that means you can only use 1, so maybe you wouldn't want to do that, but you could do it on subsequent turns? That's very strange. See, normally this is what we call a hard once per turn. It specifically says this name, so even if you get another copy of this card, it wouldn't be able to activate its effects because it has the same name. I am not sure how the rulings work with something that doesn't have the same original name, but gains its name. That's not a mechanic that gets used a whole lot, and when it does, it's usually not with like effects. That's very strange. Perhaps chat has some insight. Chat, do you know how this works? Alright, so chat is saying because they share the same name, you can't use the Synchros effect twice, even if this thing gains that Synchros effect, which is a little tricky, but the Link, you can use its effect as it once per turn. So if you somehow get 2 Links with equip cards, you can negate 2 things because it doesn't have a hard once per turn. This is kind of confusing. I will say right off the bat to the person who requested this, if you're new to Yu-Gi-Oh!, I'm not sure I would recommend starting with this, because this is already shaping up to be a complicated and unique archetype, something that is not well suited to your first time building things. Regardless, we have a good idea of what we're trying to do. We're trying to build Charles. We're trying to get Charles the Great. I still don't know how you activate the, pop during the opponent's turn, but at least you have a spell trap negate, and that's something. I've got to imagine that the rest of these do something else. I think the next route I would go is to read the rest of the synchros. That might get a little bit complicated because since everything revolves around this, and these are so much lower level than Charles is, I imagine that these are stepping stones. These are things that you're going to use as part of your combo, like you're going to build this and then use it as material to go up into the level 9. At least that's what I have to assume. So it might get very confusing very quick, but let's go ahead and read over them anyway, starting with this one, Infernoble Knight, Captain Oliver. So like everything else, this is a fire warrior. It's a synchro with 2000 attack, 500 defense, level 5 with generic materials and the following effect. When this card declares an attack while equipped, you can target one face-up card on the field and destroy it. During your main phase, except the turn this was sent to the graveyard, target one warrior you control, special summon this card from the graveyard as a tuner, and if you do, equip that monster you control to this card as an equip spell that gives it 500 attack. You can only use this effect of Captain Oliver once per turn. Alright, so it seems more like a toolbox thing. It doesn't really help you ladder climb up. I mean, it kinda does, because it summons itself from the graveyard as a tuner. So if need be, you have a level 5, and then any level 4 non-tuner would get you into Charles. But if you don't have a level 4, if you just have something you can normal summon, this still becomes a 2500 beater that destroys a face-up card on the field when it declares an attack. So pretty good utility. I'm kind of surprised I've never seen this before, but I'm guessing that this deck is like a big combo deck and they don't even bother with stuff like this. Next up is Infernoble Knight, Captain Roland, another level 5 warrior synchro fire, but this time it's a tuner on its own. Also has 2000 attack, 500 defense. If this card is synchro summoned, you can activate this effect. During the end phase, send one equip spell from your deck to the graveyard, then add one warrior from your deck to your hand. During the main phase, if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, target one warrior you control, equip this card, that monster, as an equip spell and it gains 500 attack. Wait, so this is during the main phase. So we found it. This isn't necessarily during your turn, this can be during either player's turn. So if you make Roland's a tuner, and then you can get a level 4 on the field, you can activate Charles, and then at any time during the main phase, Roland can just jump out, equip himself to Charles, and then if a card is equipped, even during the damage step, destroy one card on the field. So you get that pop, and this will go up to, 3,500, or if you have the Link, it goes to 4,000. Alright, I'm getting it. We're figuring it out. The win condition is coming together. Alright, and that brings us to the non-Infernoble card, Angelica, Princess of Noble Arms. And you may be asking yourself, Joe, how do I know this is related to the archetype if it doesn't have the archetype in the name? It has it in the text. I believe this is true on Master Duel, but if you just type Infernoble into the searcher, it'll give you every card that mentions Infernoble, whether it's in the title or the effect. So the fact that this mentions Infernoble Knight Emperor Charles here means that it's part of the archetype, or at least tangentially related. Anyway, this is another Fire Warrior level 5, Synchro, 1200 attack, 2400 defense, so much more defensive, and it's also got generic materials. If this card is special summoned, you can add one Horn of Oliphant or one card that mentions Emperor Charles from your deck to your hand. When a card or effect is activated that targets this card on the field, or when this card is targeted for an attack, quick effect, send Send one fire warrior from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, banish this card until the end phase. Then you can special summon one Roland from your deck or extra deck. You can only use each effect once per turn. This is where things get a bit confusing. So first of all, this adds Horn of Oliphant, which I saw earlier, which is why I put this down here. It's a weird trap card. I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth it, but it is searchable. It also searches any card that mentions Charles. We'll have to see how many cards do that, but we know for certain that the museum does. So if nothing else, you make any level 5 synchro and you get the field spell. In addition, when a card or effect is activated that targets this card, you can banish it and then special summon a Roland from your deck or extra deck. So normally when you see an effect like that, it's defensive. It's something to like dodge out of imperm, but this doesn't have any like effects that you would want to prevent from being negated. It doesn't do a whole lot. Instead, I think you're meant to trigger it yourself by using the equip cards. One interesting thing that new players might not necessarily know is that all equip cards inherently target. They don't have to say target a monster. The fact that they equip to something means that they target. So you can equip this with any equip card, and then you banish it, and then you can summon Roland from the extra deck. Its effect only activates if it's synchro summoned, which is another one of those weird quirks. You gotta look for the difference between like when this is synchro versus when this is special summoned. So if you use this, you don't get the effect during the end phase where you can like add a warrior, but it's still a tuner on the field. It still gets its effect in the graveyard, I'm pretty sure. This deals with another complex topic, which is cards that are properly summoned. If you send a card from your extra deck straight to the graveyard, or you don't properly synchro summon it, you can't use something like Monster Reborn to bring it back because it has to be properly summoned first. But this is weird because you don't necessarily want to re-summon this, you just want to equip it, and it doesn't have to be properly summoned to be equipped to a monster as an equip card. Basically, I had this combo where you make Roland, get a level 4, and then you set up for Charles, but what you're really going to do is make Angelica, search a card, try to equip her, then tag out, then summon Roland, and then not only do you still have that same combo essentially, but this will come back at the end phase. It's a very complicated deck, and I guess while we're here, let's go ahead and read Horn of the Oliphant to see what the hell this is. So we got a regular trap card, activate one of these effects, banish one equip spell you control or in your graveyard, then destroy one card on the field. Or you can destroy one Roland monster you control, then special summon in defense up to 3 fire warrior monsters from the deck whose total levels equal 9, but their effects are negated. Also, until the end of your next turn after this resolves, you cannot special summon except warrior monsters. You can only activate one Horn of the Oliphant per turn. Very interesting. So I'm gonna say right off the bat, worth playing at 1 because you're going to have equip spells. This deck is all about them. You're searching them. Plus the monsters that are in your back row are treated as equip spells, so you can banish one of them. I'm not sure if you have any way to recover them, but either way, it's a non-targeting pop. You can just destroy any one card on the field, face up, face down, monsters, spell trap, doesn't matter, and the fact that it's searchable means it's at least worth a 1. The second effect, I'm not as sure about. It's weird that it summons from the deck, but it doesn't let you immediately synchro or whatever. That's what I thought they were leading up to. But I guess the implication is that if you make it through your opponent's turn and you don't have to use this, then during the next turn, you just immediately get the ability to make another Charles. We'll see. From here, we have to go to the main deck, and this is a doozy. I'm not exactly sure where you start here because there's so many moving parts. We know that the monsters are going to be used as synchro material, so those are important. We also know that they're going to be equipped, so they're important in that regard, but there's also actual equips, so those are important. I think because there's less of them, we start with the noble arms first. Let's read through these spells and see if any of them are worth playing at more than 1, and then we'll go through the monsters after that. Alright, so let's just go down the line, starting with Infernoble Arms Almace, which, 1, this is not a mace, and also this doesn't look like a knight sword at all. This looks more like a samurai katana, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm no sword expert, but someone may have to tell me the lore on this. When this card is equipped to a monster, you can equip one Infernoble Arms Arms equip spell from your deck or graveyard, except itself, to one appropriate monster you control, then destroy this card. If this card is sent to the graveyard, because the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard, target one of your fire warrior monsters that is banished or in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use one effect per turn and only once per turn. Huh, that's very strange. So it essentially tutors out any other equipped card in the deck, but then destroys itself. And it only gets an effect if it's sent to the graveyard because the monster's sent. It is a way to get things back. Normally I would look at something like that and say that it's a searcher, but I guess it is technically a searcher. It depends on if these other three are very useful or not. This one is one I'm already familiar with. We'll go over it again real quick, but this one I'm pretty sure we want to play as a 3 of. This is Infernoble Arms Durundle. When this card is equipped to a monster, you can add one level 5 or lower fire warrior from your deck to your hand, then destroy this card. This card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard. Target a level 5 or lower in your graveyard, special summon it. But you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn except for warriors. This is your searcher. Searches any of these guys because they're all level 5 or lower, plus some other stuff that we may look at later. Who knows? But either way, anytime you got a searcher, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about consistency, and this gets you anything. I guess technically this gets you into this. I'm just not sure if we need to play 6 cards to search 1 card. You know what I'll say for now, we'll go ahead and we can always lower it down later. We're building a fairly pure version of the deck, so we're probably going to have more room than most decks would. Moving on, we have Infernoble Arms Hardleg. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can target one face-up monster you control. This turn, you cannot declare attacks, except with that monster. Also, it gains the ability to make a second attack during each battle phase, then destroy this card. If this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard, target one face-up monster on the field and destroy it. You can only use one effect per turn and only once that turn. Alright, so the double attack is neat. It could potentially help you OTK, but based on how this is running, I don't think we want to OTK. And even if we did, you could already get out 5,000 damage in one turn. I don't think you necessarily need this. It is technically searchable with all mace, so maybe, but I don't think it's necessarily worth it. It's also interesting to look at these 3 because they all have the effect that when they're equipped, they're immediately destroyed. And so far, we just have effects when cards are equipped. There's no benefit to destroying the cards. I guess once they're in the graveyard, then you can equip it with Charles. Except these don't do anything while they're equipped, really. I guess it's kind of like a loose protection. You could equip this, and then if they send the monster to the graveyard, no, you can only get a level 5 or lower, so you can't immediately bring Charles back. You could just bring something else back. This one lets you add a banish back to your hand. This one, I guess you could pop a card, just get an additional pop, but if this is destroyed, it's probably because they Raigeki or Darkhold or something. I don't know, maybe the monsters have something to do with it. So far, doesn't seem particularly useful. Anyway, let's go to the last one, Infernoble Arms Joyesu. I don't know how to speak French. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can target one fire warrior in your graveyard, add it to your hand, then destroy this card. If it's sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster is sent to the graveyard, special summon a fire warrior from your hand. You can only use 1 per turn. Anytime you have cards that get you stuff out of the graveyard, those are usually situational at best. You don't want to get them the first turn unless you have a whole lot of cards that are going to absolutely guarantee that you have stuff in the graveyard. Because if you get this and you only have 1 monster, you're dead. But if you get it with something that lets you search, oh, that opens up new plays. Now you have another card to work with. Maybe one of those cards combos with this. Maybe because this is destroyed, one of these triggers or something like that. This is meh. And because it's meh, I'm going to actually go back to what I said before and put this as a 1 of. Essentially, it's just a 4th copy of Durundle because we don't have other equipped cards we want to equip. In fact, you know what? Let's just not even play this. Let's just keep it at this. We'll see what our search power is, because we got a whole bunch of monsters. If we find that, we absolutely have one that we need to see, we can put this back in. Otherwise, I'm skeptical of playing these. And normally, I would say next we go into the monsters, but we've only got 1 trap. We might as well, while we're in the spell traps, just check this out and see what it does. This is the Continuing Epic of Charles, which has to be the most meta card art I've ever seen out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Its effect is reveal one Noble Arms equipped spell in your hand, and if you do, special summon one Infernoble Knight from your hand or deck, then either equip the revealed card to the monster or send it to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard, target one Charles you control, equip a Noble Knight from your hand or deck to that monster as an equip spell. That gives it 500 attack. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, so the main effect, you know what, I was wrong to read this first. We really need to understand the monsters to know if this is any good. This does mention Charles, which means it's searchable off of the level 5 Synchro, and if we have something that, like, when it's equipped, it's a disruption, that might be good, although I feel like Horn of the Oliphant is still better. The effect in the graveyard is just another way to trigger Charles, although each effect is once per turn, so you don't really need another way once you've already got Roland. Granted, Roland can be hit with, like, Perm or DD Crow or whatever, and this can't. So maybe this is worth playing as a one-of to search. Maybe it's worth playing with like Foolish Burial Goods if we have other ones that are good in the graveyard. The problem, of course, is that in order to do the first effect, we have to reveal a Noble Arms. And so far, we're only playing one Noble Arms. Maybe some of these count as Noble Arms. Maybe we'll find some other stuff, but you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and say, put it in the maybe category. We'll maybe do this, but probably not. Alright, so now that we've gone over all the spell traps and determined that most of them aren't worth playing, let's start with these monsters. And they're a mixed bunch. Some are level 1, some are level 4. There's a mix of tuners and non-tuners. I can't really see anything that indicates one is more important than the other, so let's just start on the left and work our way to the right. Beginning with Infernoble Knight, Amaugus. This is a level 4 warrior, 1500 attack, 1000 defense, and while this card is an equip card, the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by battle. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle into the deck 3 of your other fire warrior monsters and or noble arm cards that are banished or in your graveyard, draw 1 card. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 warrior you control, equip this card to that monster you control. Alright, so at least on your turn, you can activate Charles with this. It recycles stuff if it gets banished or sent to the graveyard, so Oliphant not looking bad. Again, this is a recycling effect, which kind of like an effect that adds from the hand is something you don't want to see first turn. This doesn't look like it's a combo starter. Maybe we'll need a level 4 non-tuner to get going, but we have 3 other options with that at least. So for now, I'm going to say probably worth it at 1 just to recycle stuff. I guess we can put 2 more in the side deck for now. But it doesn't seem like a 3 of to me. Next up, we have Infernoble Knight Ogier, another level 4 fire warrior. You know, I'm gonna stop saying fire warrior because they're all fire warriors. To level 4, 1500 attack, 2000 defense, he's got that booty, and when this card is an equipped card, the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is normal or special summoned, send 1 Noble Arms or 1 fire warrior except itself from your deck to the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 warrior you control, equip this card. Alright, so we're seeing a theme already where the monsters have the ability to equip themselves during the main phase. And this can send anyone to the graveyard. So if any of these have the effect that, like, while they're equipped, they can special summon themselves, that makes this a combo starter. So I'm tentatively going to put it at 3 and say that this probably does something that you really want. None of the Noble Arms do anything in the graveyard, so it's weird that it sends them, but maybe there's a way to recover it. But we'll see. I could be wrong about this, but I have a feeling that you're going to want to see Ogier as often as possible. Next up, Infernoble Knight Turpin. This is a level 4 again with 1400 attack, 1700 defense. While this card is an equipped card, the equipped monster can be treated as a tuner if used as synchro material. That's very weird. Is there some situation where you'd want to be treated as a tuner but not for synchro material? That's just very weird wording. I don't know. Anyway, you can only use each of the effects once per turn. If you control a monster equipped with an equipped card, you can special summon this from your hand or graveyard, but if you summon it from the graveyard, banish it when it leaves the field. If this card is in your graveyard, target 1 warrior, equip it. Alright, so if you have Ogier, you could send this to the graveyard, and then if you have any other thing that can equip to Ogier, then this can summon itself out. Granted, it's a level 4, you don't really have anything to do with 2 level 4s. Again, I'm going to say this is a one of, you're probably going to foolish it, and otherwise you don't really want it. We'll have to see how easy it is to equip stuff or get stuff in the graveyard. This might be more useful. So far, I'm saying at least a 1 of. Finally, that brings us to Infernoble Knight Oliver, which is our only level 4 tuner. 1000 attack, 1500 defense. While this card is an equip card, your opponent cannot target the equipped monster with card effects. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. Send 1 Fire Warrior or 1 equip spell from your hand or field to the graveyard. Special summon this card from your hand as a level 1 monster. If this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 warrior you control, equip this card. Alright, so we found another level 3. This is the first one. It's not like a 1 card combo, but him plus any other card gets you into Angelica, and then you just need to get another level 4 on the field. And now that we know that, I'm actually going to say that this guy is a 3 of as well, because now we have really easy ways to get any of these into the graveyard where they can then equip or summon themselves, do stuff from there. The 3 of these together make a pretty good combo, especially because this becomes a level 1. So that instantly goes a level... Okay, I'm kind of getting those. Let's see how these level 1s do. Maybe one of these will supplant these? Hard to say. Okay, so once again, the lady is not necessarily an Infernoble Knight. This is Courageous Crimson Chevalier Bradamante. A level 1 Fire Warrior, tuner, 500 attack, 200 defense fire monster. Keep it in your soul. And this card is always treated as an Infernoble Knight. Alright, well, I stand corrected. You can discard this card, target a warrior you control, equip it with 1 equip spell from the deck. When this card, not equipped with an equip spell, is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it. If you do, equip that monster your opponent controls to this card. Oh, wow. So first of all, we're playing this at 3. Who needs to play the Owl Mace? This can get you Durandal from the deck. Discard it to get Durandal from the deck, and at first I was gonna be like, oh, it has some like battle destruction effect, it floats, that's so outdated, but the battle destruction on this is crazy. If it's destroyed by battle with an opponent's monster and sent to the graveyard, you equip the opponent's monster. I'm not sure how often that comes up. This strikes me as like a card that would have been cool like 5 or 6 years ago as a way to out specific things, but it's still pretty neat because it works whether they attack or you attack. So if they have something that like can't be destroyed, can't be targeted, you could just normal summon this and crash it into that, assuming you can take the damage and you just steal the monster. Very neat indeed. I like the design if nothing else. Next up, we return to the Infernoble Knights with Renard. Another level 1, 500 attack, 200 defense. And if you control a Fire Warrior, special summon this from your hand. If summoned this way, treat this card as a tuner. You can only special summon 1 Renard once per turn this way. If this card is special summoned, you can target one of your Fire Warriors or one of your equip spells that is banished or in your graveyard, add it to your hand. You can only use this once per turn. Alright, so there's another combo. You have Veni level 4, and then you special summon this. Wow, we just got a whole bunch of starters. Yeah, I'll tentatively put this at a 3 for now, because I was sitting here like, oh, it special summons itself. It would be nice if it was a tuner, and then it turns into a tuner, so it's fine. Alright, next up, we have Infernoble Knight Roland. We got another Roland. This is one that the Angelica can summon from the deck if need be, so maybe you just needed 1 of. We have a lot of ways to make 5s already. This is another level 1, 500, 500. Quick effect. You can target 1 face-up monster you control, equip this card from your hand to the target as an equip spell that gives the card 500 attack. During the end phase, if this is in the graveyard, because it was sent there this turn, add 1 Fire Warrior monster, except for a Roland, or 1 equip spell from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, so we have another way to activate Charles, this time from the hand. So you can set up this situation where like have Roland in the graveyard, Roland in the hand. No matter what your opponent does, they can't stop you from getting Roland, baby. I'm really not sure. Part of me thinks like it would be worth it to play it at 3 just so you have it. You can use that effect, or you can normal summon it if you got any of the tuners or any of the things that treat themselves as tuners. As it stands, I think it's a 1 of at best. best, might not even necessarily be a one of, but only time will tell. Next up, we have everyone's favorite knight, Infernoble Knight Astolfo. Another 200 defense, level 1, and you can banish one fire warrior from your hand or graveyard to special summon this from your hand. Then you can make this card's level become the level of that banished monster. You can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon this banished card during your second standby phase after this effect's activation, then special summon one fire warrior that is banished during your graveyard. You can only use this once per duel. Alright, that's very, very strange. A delayed effect out of everything, probably just a gimmick. Maybe it relates to the lore. You know, he left and came back 2 days later or something like that. The fact that you can banish one from your graveyard to special summon this and it becomes the level, fairly good, except I feel like you want all of these in the graveyard. You do have ways to like recover them, but then you're getting into really big combos. I'm gonna put this at a maybe at best. I don't think we necessarily need this one with everything else we have, but who knows, maybe I'll be proven wrong. All that leaves then is our final Infernoble Knight, Ricardetto. 0 attack, 500 defense, it's a tuna. You can banish this card from your hand or graveyard, special summon one level 4 lower fire warrior from your hand as a tuner. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one level 4 lower fire warrior in your graveyard, except a copy of itself, special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except warrior monsters. You can only use one Ricardetto effect per turn, and only once per turn. Okay, I actually remember this. I think we tried to tech this into the Madeline Boxer deck I had. Here, it seems much better. It gives you the ability to get something out of your hand, so if one of your effects gets negated, this is one of those cards that I would say is recovery, if not for the fact that we're playing in a hand trap format currently. Right now, this strikes me as like extension. If nothing else, it's a level 1 tuner which combos with some of your other stuff, but if something gets hand trapped, it gets ashed, it gets impermed, this allows you to get other stuff out of your hand, especially since we're playing so many monsters and then ways to get to monsters. Going back to this, target one noble in your spell trap, special summon it. So I think we might want to play this at 3. Even though it's searchable, this just gives you more extension. And even though I haven't tested it out yet, I'm feeling pretty confident with this lineup of 20 monsters, the 3 museum, and the 3 Durundal, that we're going to be able to get into Charles extremely quickly and extremely consistently. In fact, I'm going to go ahead right now and just be like, we're playing a second one of these, we're playing a second one of Charles, probably playing a second Roland, just in case. And you know what? Let's throw a second Angelica on there as well. Alright, so now that we've read every card in the archetype, at least all the ones that are directly related to the Infernobles, now we just have to fill in the rest of the deck. And there's several ways I could go about this. If I was being really stringent with this archetype, if I was really trying to like learn all the ins and outs on my own without using other resources, what I would do is sit down and like now read all the Noble Knight cards to see if any of them have synergy with the Infernoble Knight cards. I would look through all the Noble Arms cards and see if any of the other older equips can be useful in this. And then I'd probably also sit down and filter the Fire Warriors and go through all of those, because I'm sure there are some that would be really useful in here. There's also just like Isolde. I'm pretty sure if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh! For any amount of time, you know the Noble Knights link. It's used in like every warrior build ever, and it runs on having a lot of equip cards. So we could also potentially spend a lot of time looking at every warrior and every equip card in this game to try to figure out the optimal way to build this. That's the unfortunate thing about being requested an archetype like this. It's kind of like being requested Heroes or Blackwings. You're asking me to look at an archetype that has, at this point, 100+ members that could be fit into it and a bunch of micro synergies with other stuff. Of course, the way I'm talking about this, it should be obvious, I'm not going to do that. It's not within the scope of this show. I'm trying to keep things short and concise. So instead, I'm going to do this. Behold the Master Duel Tax in all its glory. We got Maxi, we got Ash Blossom, Called By, Cross Out Designator, and Infinite Impermanence. It's probably the best hand trap. Oh, and since we're a bunch of level 4 warriors, I threw in reinforcements of the army just to fill out the 40 cards. And as I said a moment ago, this is probably not optimal. I mean, the Maxi and the Ash Blossom probably are, but there's a lot of things you would change, cut, a lot of more stuff that you would add in, and it's just not within the scope of this show. This is getting you a very basic rundown, teaching you the framework of how the deck works. If you want something more complex, you either have to sit down and do all that research yourself, or more than likely watch a whole bunch of like deck profiles, read up about how the deck works, because Infernoble's been out for years at this point. A lot of people have topped with the deck, a lot of people still play it. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like an Infernoble Discord out there with people who are just big fans of this deck, who have come up with much better builds than I have. Builds that probably include Azolde, like I said, and Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. This thing is a house. I'm absolutely certain this is involved in here somewhere, but at least with the cards I have here, there's no way to search it that I know of. Maybe if I find one, I'll put it in here. But these are two things that would be included if we weren't doing a roughed draft. And that's probably the best way to think about this. You know, this is a beta build of the deck. Not the best, just a proof of concept. We're gonna use this and see if we can get into our win condition, which is Emperor Charles the Great with some way to trigger it during our opponent's turn. Once we know that, I feel like everything else the deck does is just going to be an extension of that. It's gonna be that plus more. So once you understand how to do that, then you can go and read up about the deck, find out the better combos, and when people start explaining like, oh, you use this to do this, to do that, to do that, you don't get lost. You know what all these pieces are. Now, as such, I'm not really gonna fill out the extra deck right now. I'm not sure what else this deck could make. I could look at other like warrior synchros, but again, right now, I'm just gonna focus on seeing if I can make one or two of these. If I can make two of them, that would be even better, so we'll see. I'm gonna test this out, and we can come back and try to see if we can improve this. For now, let's get our hands on these cards and see what we can actually figure out. Alright, so after sitting down here for probably a bit too long, I have come up with a pretty neat 2-card combo, which I'm gonna show you real quick, even though I'm pretty sure that it's not optimal, but this should still give you an idea of what you can do. Now, the unfortunate thing about this deck is that, as far as I can tell, there aren't any 1-card combos. Almost everything is 2 cards. The fortunate part about it is that there's a lot of 2 cards that get you into this, especially since any of those cards could be like Reinforcements of the Army searches all of these, the one Durundle searches all of these, although that changes the combo. You'll see. Either way, we're gonna start with Ogier. Ogier's probably the best because it just immediately send something to the graveyard. And we're gonna send Oliver to the graveyard. Because we also got Renaud. If you control one, you can special summon it, and when he's summoned, you can grab one from the graveyard back to your hand. So what do you know? We got our Oliver back. And then this becomes a tuner when it's special summoned. So now we've got 5. We can make our Angelica of the Noble Arms. And then she gets a search. If you already have the museum, you don't have to search the museum. Then you just get Horn of Oliphant, and you get an extra pop on top of whatever you want to do. We're going to get the Noble Arms Museum. Then what we're going to do is we can use Ogier. We can try to equip to her, and she's going to be like, oh no, I want nothing to do with you. I will run away. Off she goes, but not before sending another Infernoble Knight to the graveyard. And we're going to pick Turpin. And then we get to special summon a Roland. Hello, Roland. How's it going? Big level 5 tuner. Then we're going to activate Noble Arms Museum. We're going to activate Noble Arms Museum and get Durundle. We're going to equip Durundle to this guy. And then while he's equipped, this says if you have one that's equipped, you could special summon it. So let's just special summon this real quick while we're here. Then we'll activate this effect. We're going to destroy it, and we're going to get Maugus. So now we've got a level 5 tuner, a level 4 non-tuner. That means we can make Charles. Get out of my head, Charles. What do you know? Look at him. He's got spicy hands and everything. So in order to make the link, we need to equip Charles with something. So we'll equip. We're not going to pop our own stuff. That would be bad. But now we can make the link. Oh boy. And then the link can equip Charles. Hi there. No, we're not going to pop a thing. But since we've used this to search earlier, we can activate it and summon the Charles from our back row. Hello, it's me, a second Charles. Now granted, like I said earlier in the episode, these are hard once per turn. You can't activate both, but the Link is not a hard once per turn. So we can activate this, we can send off Maugus, summon this. When this is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle back stuff in your graveyard. And because everything's like once per turn, we can just go ahead and like put all this stuff that's banished back, draw a free card. Why not? Oh hey, look, it's another Infernoble Knight. We probably want to go less on these because you get more hand traps, but that's beside the point. Now, the thing is, the combo I came up with here is we activate Maugus, we equip it here, and then we can make a second Link monster because we got another Charles equipped with something. It's also worth pointing out though, Oliver is a level 1 tuner, you have a level 9, and there's a level 10 synchro that also happens to be a warrior called Baron de Fleur. Perhaps you've heard of her. We could summon that instead, and it's probably better because that's an Omni Negate and this is not an Omni Negate. I didn't think about that while we were building, so instead we're gonna do this, make a second one. We're also going to equip this one with Charles, and then during the end phase, we will return her, which doesn't do a whole lot, but she's there, you know, she's there for moral support. And then we'll equip the Durandal that we kept in the graveyard, which again doesn't do anything, but then we can equip one from the deck. And in this case, we're going to pick, frick, I can't remember which one it was. It's Oliver, it's always Oliver. Equip Oliver, so now we have a 4,500 attack monster that can't be targeted. If you're worried about destruction, you can pick one of the other one that destroys stuff. But we've got lethal assembled here, and what this represents is as soon as they summon something, we can get Roland, equip Roland, that will trigger the effect. Pop a card. And then if they had anything else, this is 1, 2 spell trap negates, because these are not once per turn. So 1 non-targeting pop, 2 spell trap negates. One of these is a 5,000 that can't be targeted. Next turn, you could just summon something else out of your extra deck, but not the Roland because it wasn't properly summoned. Although you gotta search first. Very important, search the card first. But I mean, you know what was properly summoned, I'm pretty sure. Was this Charles? We can just get this Charles out here. So if we didn't already have like a Barone, now we can make one. If we wanted to make a second Charles the Great, they said a bunch of stuff. And there you go. That's what this deck can do, and I didn't even fill out the extra deck. I didn't even add Isolde. I didn't add a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm pretty sure I could take that Gearfried that I wanted and put that in the back row, like equip it during the end phase. You give up the targeting protection, but then when it comes around to your turn, you can summon it. Either way, there's a lot of potential, clearly, but I've absolutely got to change up this list. So this was our rough draft, the first draft, the beta version, and now that I know how the deck works, let's go ahead and see if we can change it into something a little bit better. Whoosh-da-da-da. Behold, deck version 2. Still not quite in like, you know, complete form. I don't know what comes after beta. Gamma? This is the Gamma version of the deck. And we've made some changes based on what we figured out with testing. The main thing I noticed is that if you get to the field spell, it lets you add any Infernoble arms from your deck to your hand. And we only really had the one, Durandal, and oftentimes we use this to get our plays started. So if we didn't have a second card, we would have nothing. So I decided to go ahead and add in this one, Joyous or Jeus or whatever. Just adds a card from the graveyard to the hand. I know now that that can be a very useful ability to activate. And then we also added this, which is not an Infernoble card, not a Noble Arms card. I don't know how you're supposed to know that this is related, other than it has, you know, it mentions Angelica, which is the 5 synchro that we use. But this is equipped to a monster that is equipped with an equip card. You can only control one. Each turn, negate the effect of your opponent's first spell card or effect that resolves. And then once per turn, while this is equipped to a monster, you can gain 500 life points, destroy this card. If you do, your opponent can't target that monster it was equipped to with card effects while it is face up in the monster zone. So some neat protection, but more importantly, another spell trap negate. Now the neat thing about this, it negates it when it resolves, which means it can negate anything. Super poly even, but only if it's the first thing your opponent activates, so they have to not quite understand how this works. But I mean, to be fair, It's very weirdly worded. It doesn't like negate the activation, it negates the effect when it resolves. But this is still pretty good. And then other than that, we got rid of a whole lot of the extenders that we had originally. The Chevalier I dropped down to 1. I still like its second effect, but realistically you don't necessarily need this, because all it does is search Durandal, and the field spell already searches that, and we've already got a whole bunch of ways to get monsters anyway, and you honestly kind of don't want to open with this if you can help it, because you can get more advantage searching it off the field spell. But yeah, that's why we didn't want to play that. And then Ricardetto, good in theory, but you really have to be playing a whole lot of Infernobles and open with a whole lot of them. And with how easy the combos are to do with just 2 cards, you kind of want to limit it so that you're drawing just like 2 of these, 2 hand traps, and then some kind of protection, I guess would be the best word. That's the best way to do this. If you're unfamiliar with this, let me go ahead and read it real quick. You can banish 1 equip spell from your field or graveyard, special summon this from your hand. At the start of the damage step, if this card attacks, equip a face-up monster on the field to this card as an equip spell that gives it 500 attack. When a monster effect is activated, quick effect, send a face-up equipped card you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So, you know, a monster negate, something that can stop Nibiru, Ash Blossom, perhaps. Just a great thing to add onto your end board. I know there is a way to summon this with Isolde, but even though I've added it into the extra deck, I don't want to learn the combos with this tonight. But the fact that we can run it at 3, and we're almost certainly going to have a Durandal into the graveyard because all our combos go through it, we have ways to search it, means you're almost always going to be able to summon this, and then you can use it to protect your play. So if you happen to open with this, and then your combo, you're doubly protected. And then other than that, I just filled out the extra deck some more. We got another level 5 warrior that we could summon. SP Little Knights, just a good staple card. I put this in here. I put Link Karibo in here because we got level 1s. These are not the best options, but they're just things I could think of. The one really unique thing in here is Lava Exilord. This is a tuner and a non-tuner fire monster, which we have a lot of fire monsters. 2 level 4s, you know, not too difficult to get in this deck. And when your opponent activates the effect of a monster on their field or in their hand, quick effect, destroy that monster and inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Doesn't negate, it just destroys. And there are certain monsters that, like, destroying them is almost worse than negating them. More importantly though, if the synchro summoned card and its owner's control is destroyed by an opponent's card, special summon up to 3 non-synchro fire monsters with 200 defense from their graveyard, but negate their effects. Do you remember when I was talking about the fire monsters with 200 defense? They're here. We found them. You could get Renard and this one, and I guess they have to be non-synchro so you can't get Charles. But still, I told you it would come back, and now it's probably not important, but you know, it's good to know that that synergy exists. But anyway, now that we have this version of the deck, let's go in and do a couple more test hands and see if it works a little bit better than last time. Alright, so last time I showed you a very specific combo, something I had labbed out, working with 2 cards that I knew were good. This time, I'm going to show you what you could do with a random 5-card hand. Although, granted, this random 5-card hand, I mean, it has Ogier. You want this thing. They're gonna normal summon, send something to the graveyard. Okay, so we need a tuner. So I guess we send one of the level 1s. Does any of these have a way to special summon themselves out of the graveyard? No, not necessarily. However, we can send Renard, and because we open with Durandal and the museum, what we can do is activate the museum, activate the effect, grab ourselves this equip card, and check it out. Now we got the combos. Things are paying off. We can get this back to our hand. Now I could have searched it with Durandal, but I kind of want to save that for later. So, you know, now we have that. Special summon this. We want to add this back to our hand? I mean, I don't see why not. Maybe I'll live to regret this, but who knows? Then let's go ahead and make this girl. As we do, activate the effect, and since we've already got the museum, we'll just take Horn of the Oliphant, just get a, you know, extra pop on there. So I guess we go ahead and use this. We try to equip, she says no, off she goes, and we'll send, yeah, we need this because we're gonna special summon it. And then we will summon Roland. Does this go to the graveyard or just stay in my hand now? Okay, it goes to the graveyard. But that's good. I believe it has an effect. If this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there, you can add 1 fire. Okay, so I get to add something in the end phase. That's always neat. Anyway, now that we've got Roland, we can equip Durandal. While we're equipped, let's go ahead and summon this from the graveyard. Howdy do. Now we can use this, grab, gee, I don't know, we haven't used Oliver yet. Sure, we'll get Oliver and company. That'll be fun. That's a fun movie. Tap dancing cat. Comments in the comments if you know what the hell I'm talking about. Anyway, let's go ahead and make Roland. Not Roland, Charles. Charles is like Roland, just with some fundamental differences. And then I guess we equip this. Howdy doody. No, I don't want to activate the effects. I don't want to destroy my own cards, thank you. Go ahead and get the Emperor. Summon it back. Let's go ahead, summon it back. I think in this case, this is you can send a Noble Arms from your hand. So it's a good thing we did add this back. Summon this, and let's go ahead and just make bar on the floor. So now we've got a Spell Trap negate, an Omni negate, a pop. This thing can negate, I don't know, Ash or something like that. And I can still equip this one. Your opponent cannot target the equipped cards with card effects. Great! I like not being targeted by card effects. So let's equip that. End phase. This will come back. This will... Oh, wait. No, let's do Search with Roland, because that can search a fire monster, or we can get any equip card. So that's how we get the Angelic Ring. And then we use Charles, because Charles can equip an equip card from our hand or graveyard. So we can actually get it something useful, and then also equip a fire monster from the deck. We're already untargetable, so I guess we make it undestructible too. So there you go. We've got a 4,000 that can't be targeted, can't be destroyed. The first spell they activate is automatically negated. We can negate an additional spell trap. We have an Omni negate, and we have 2 card pops. I'm not sure what deck can play through this. You would have to have a lot. And the beta testing deck is absolutely not going to hold up to this. We're actually going to go ahead and do this. We're going to, I guess we're going to banish you just because I need to destroy 1 card on the field. Just to show like, oh wait, there's no point. Yeah, that just automatically, oh, and it went to the end phase. Well, I guess if you negate it, then it doesn't resolve. Okay, so you can kind of choose how this works. But yeah, ideally we would negate that with this, and then we could bring back this and like pop stuff. Just as you do. I mean, we've also got a pop with this. This is like well over lethal, I'm pretty sure. And even if it wasn't, we could just use the Noble Arms Museum. Grab another one of these so we can search something that we can normal summon. Then we can activate this, bring this back, send another card to the graveyard. If you're worried about something, I don't know, this can't be summoned out of the graveyard, but it's there. The point is, we did it. Let's go attack. We've earned it. Charles, prove that you're the true heir to the Holy Roman Empire. And Angelica can watch from her couch or whatever. That's neat. So, yeah, a pretty powerful deck. And as I've said many times during this, and I really want to hammer it home because there's a surprising number of people who go in the comments and they're like, this deck is awful. And I'm like, I said it was awful. I didn't say it was going to be good, but the fact that I could just throw this together, and even without learning the Isolde combos, even without looking up deck profiles, still make something that has like 5 negates on it, I think that's a pretty good start. I think that gives you a pretty good idea of where the ceiling of this is. Now, how well it plays through hand traps, how well it can play going second, what other kind of cards you would want to put in there to shape up the meta, that's for more advanced deck profiles. But hopefully you have an idea of what this deck can do, what some of the tech cards are, and you can then build on that foundation from here. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, go and hit that like button, maybe subscribe. I appreciate subscribers. I put out a whole bunch of content, a lot of these Let's Learns. If you like seeing different archetypes run through and how the builds work, consider that. I've also got Ladder Climb. There's a lot of neat stuff. There's also a Patreon. And speaking of which, Thanks again to the Patreon sponsor. I appreciate it, Column. It's nice to be able to actually look at this deck, figure out how it works. Another great thing about this series is that once you learn the basic in and outs of a deck, you learn exactly where its choke points are. Now that I know how this thing works and how it assembles all of its various playmakers, how it gets to its win condition, I can hopefully have some more insight to stop it if I ever run into it on the ladder, which, kind of surprised I haven't run into it on the ladder. I guess they're just better fire decks right now. Oh shit, I didn't even put Promethean Princess. That's probably good in here too. Either way, I'm rambling. Thank you again for watching. Thank you again to Colin for suggesting this. Thank you to Twitch chat for keeping me company during all of my long, insane ramblings. And thank you to oh, he's sleeping. He's sleeping back there. Don't bother him. He's just having a little nappy time. So get out. Don't be loud about it. Don't let the door hit you. You don't want to wake up Critter.